What's up, Simonics, and welcome back to a new Ionic video. Today we will talk about reviewing your Ionic application, but we're not doing the casual
app review
and instead focus on the quality of your code. After you've worked on a project for quite some time, it's usually a good idea to review your code base, and I get asked from companies from time to time to review their code base because it's kind of hard to do this on your own. You've worked on the project for quite some time and you basically get blind for all the things that you did wrong. But you kind of already feel it because let's be honest, we are already kind of bad developers at some point and we might get better over time, and especially a lot of people start with Ionic as a first project when they want to transition some company application to Ionic, so they get started and of course they make some mistakes. And therefore, reviewing your Ionic application can dramatically increase the quality of your code, the stability, you can fix memory leaks, you can make it easy to maintain the code in the future, and therefore a code review is a great idea. In the past, I've already created a video about Ionic best practices, and there's a full guide inside the Ionic Academy that you should check out if you're not yet a member. But in case you've already built your application without knowing about the best practices that I've created, here are the steps that you can take in case your company doesn't have the resources to hire someone externally, or you just want to make it on your own but don't know where to get started. And here are some practical steps and topics that you should check out when reviewing your Ionic applications. Okay, so you want to review your Ionic applications. I've split this video into different sections that you can check out. I've also added the chapter marks so you can mess up all my playtime, but you will find the relevant information more quickly. Area number one to watch out for is the architecture of your Ionic application. Of course, this depends kinda on the framework you use, Angular, React, Vue, or no framework at all. And of course, this is different for all the different frameworks, but you should check out the best practices or in general the coding guidelines for the framework you've used. If you split up all the components and services in Angular application and kind of random in your app, that's a bad architecture. You should really follow the best practices for setting up an Angular project or a React project, and check out the style guides that are available for all of those frameworks or languages that you use. This is a very basic step that won't really improve the performance of your application, but it is a step forward to make your app maintainable and easier to work on for other people that might come into the project at a later point, so it should definitely be part of your app review. Step number two is to check out the packages used in your application for two reasons. Reason number one, you should keep your packages up to date. It's quite easy to see that the Angular versions have changed a lot in the last time, so I don't know, Angular 8 feels like it was a year ago and now we're at Angular 11, 12. And there are improvements within Angular that your app can benefit from. Like for example, you might not use the Ivy rendering with Angular, and you can easily toggle this on and use in your application if you're using the latest version of Angular. So you should make sure that your packages, Angular, Ionic, but also all the other things they're using are up to date. There are tools to easily check for the latest available versions and try them out. Of course, be careful, you might break your application if you use a new major version of something and you don't know what the change is really about. But usually staying up to date was also recommended in my best practices. And the second reason to check out your packages is to see which or what impact they have on the final size of your application. There are a few packages, for example, Moment.js was something I used in the past, but is now not recommended to use anymore because they're a lot more lightweight packages to work with your dates in your application that not blow up your whole bundle size in the end. So you can use a source map explorer in the end to check the output of your Ionic or Angular or React build process, and then understand which package of your node packages is really causing a lot of size in the final application. You can also use Angular budgets if you're using Angular to get a warning up front, But in general, check out up to date and check out the sizes of the packages, and perhaps there are other packages that could do the job just like the package you used. Perhaps you're just using a fraction of that package, so you don't really need that huge package that you included in your package.json. Area number 3 to take a look at is the performance, and that is kind of a huge area, and maybe we'll do another dedicated video on performance. You've asked about this in the past as well. The first thing you can take a look at is the startup speed of your application. Are you doing any heavy operations right in the constructor of the app component, or does your splash screen take 5 seconds to hide, or are you loading 100 components right in the beginning that you could include with lazy loading? There's really a lot that you can do in terms of performance to especially increase the startup speed of your application, and then also while navigating inside your Ionic apps. For example, in terms of the startup speed, make sure that you're not doing a lot in the constructor right in the first pages, that you're using lazy loading and not load all the components right when the application starts. And in terms of the further performance in your application, there's the web profiler that you can use. I think I haven't shown this in the past. Leave a comment if you're interested in this. I think this topic deserves a whole new video on profiling the memory heap of your Ionic applications and finding memory leaks, because you might have not unsubscribed at some point, or you're creating new objects that are never removed, pages are not destroyed with a garbage collector. There's really a lot that could go wrong that can have a huge impact on your performance. So people might use your application, and after time it becomes slower and slower until it finally crashes. And that is definitely a problem in bigger applications. It might not be a problem in really small applications, but it's an area to watch out for, and I think performance needs more focus in the future. Besides those things, there are also other areas like using skeleton views to improve the perceived performance of your Ionic applications when new pages come up and your HTTP request takes a few seconds. We can talk about caching your HTTP calls. If you're using a progressive web app, there are videos in the past that I created about caching strategies with a progressive web app. So there's really a lot to focus on in terms of performance. You have to find out which of those elements is important for your applications. Perhaps you're making a lot of HTTP requests, and perhaps you're performing like 10 times the same HTTP request in the beginning because you have some kind of strange logic going on. This is an area you really need to focus on, as it can really make or break the application. If it takes 10 seconds to load and every new page takes 2 seconds, your users will likely leave the application. Area number 4 you should take a look at is Async Code. I think we had enough videos in the past, especially dedicated videos on how to handle all of this. Usually there are most of the times problems related to not handling them correctly, not unsubscribing, performing them too often, or in general handling them in the wrong kind of way, in combination with promises, which could then also introduce race conditions in your applications. For example, your app loads, you load some object from the storage, and you expect that the object is immediately available, but guess what? It's not available immediately. Understanding that part and diving once again into that is also an area that you should take a closer look at when you review your Ionic applications. And just like we talked before regarding performance about caching, this is also the point where you should ask yourself, do I have to make this HTTP call now? Do I really have to reload all data? Would it be enough to just send it to the server and locally update my array or behavior subject or any kind of stuff? There's really a lot you can gain if you handle data correctly and try to use as much local data as possible. Or perhaps this would also be a good idea to talk about NGRX or NGXS in the future. Once again, leave a comment if you want to see more about state management. I feel like this and the performance definitely deserve new videos, right? Area number 5 to review is security in your application. If you're using some kind of authentication in your application, you might have guards if you're using Angular, or another mechanism to protect your internal pages if you're using React or Vue. I don't really know about that, but I'm sure they have something like this. This is an area you should take a look at, as well. it is the front-end security of your application. You have to understand that the real security will always happen on the back-end side on your server. You need to make sure that the API is protected, users can't access it without a token, all that kind of stuff that goes into building a secure backend. But in the front-end side, you should still make sure that you're not including any passwords to the API, not using any token that shouldn't be there. Really, you should treat your Ionic application like it's a website and anyone can read the code. Now you might say, okay Simon, I'm gonna obfuscate my code and uglify it, no one will ever check it out. Well, yes, you can do that, but that's just theoretical security. In one comment on Stack Overflow, the Ionic forum, I read that if your device understands your application, so can I at some point. And that is basically true. If a computer can understand your code, even if it's some kind of bytecode, you can reverse engineer everything. And most likely it will be possible for people to find out any secret key or any secret information that you try to use in your application. So really, never use any secret information inside a front-end application like Angular, Ionic, or it doesn't matter if you're using React Vue, really don't do it. And using another uglifier or making the code even more strange won't solve that in the end. There will be ways to reverse engineer everything. People might jailbreak their app, extract everything. Really, just assume it will be possible. Even if your legal department says we need to use a more secure obfuscation, well, it's just another level of bullshit, really. It doesn't add anything. Just keep the sensitive information like secret keys out of your Ionic application. Area number 6 to keep an eye on is something, well, I wouldn't say optional, but well, you could put that under priority 3 or 4, handle later, and that is applying clean code principles, like don't repeat yourself, keep it simple and stupid? No, keep it... Well, just look up the KISS principle. What I mean is really try to use all the available functions from TypeScript, use interfaces, add the return type to functions, try to use types for your objects inside your classes whenever possible, and just write good code. Yeah, write good code. I think at some point this is pretty obvious to developers. You don't call a function handle this and perform that after you do whatever. A function should usually do one thing. It shouldn't be like 200 lines. You can split it up in different functions. You can use services. There's a whole lot you can do in terms of keeping your code clean, easy, maintainable, and readable, and that is about applying really those general code principles. If you make a review of your Ionic application, you don't have to go through all 100 files and notice everything. Perhaps you can already on the fly improve it because you got better since you started the project. Or if it's more challenging or taking more time, then just note it and add a ticket to your system. But note those things and try to get better over time with the clean code principles. And finally, step number 7, I think we're at 7, is error handling and hidden bugs. And with that, I don't mean I don't expect that an error could happen, but just assume an error could happen at every point. For example, you're loading a user object and your view depends on a certain variable. Now, you have tested this like 100 times and every time the variable was set. But what if it might not be set? Is your code handling that correctly, or is the view looking ugly and throwing a JavaScript error? So these are the kind of hidden bugs that are hard to see, hard to find, especially if you've worked for quite some time on the project. Really, you need a bit of distance to the project to assume that certain variables might be null. But just always try to have the best error handling for all the cases, and even just a fallback handling for like an unknown error, say give out an alert, whatever happened, I'm sorry, try it again soon. But don't let the error happen without catching it, without informing the user it. Your app might crash or it might work in a strange way after an error, and you really want to prevent that behavior. So these are the 7, I would say, main categories that you can go through when reviewing your Ionic application. There's definitely more, and we didn't specifically talk about everything in every category so far. If you're interested in something specific of one category, like the performance, the profiling with the web tools, or what was the second thing we noted? I think state management, leave a comment below the video so I think those are really two important things that we should talk more of, but perhaps there's even more that you want to see in a video or that you already did in the past, so feel free to share it now in the comments. Alright, and that's it once again for today. I hope you enjoyed the tips shared in this video. I know it can be kind of hard, especially if you work on a project for a long time, but it is really a good use of your time to review your Ionic application. My recommendation is to simply approach the project as if you were someone completely new, not knowing a thing about the project. I know this is gonna be hard, but try to go through each of the categories that we shared in this video and note all your findings, and in the end you might have a document of, let's say, 3, 5, 10 pages, depending on the size of your application, that you can then work off or split into different priorities, work on now, work on later, so you can over time increase the quality, the stability and the maintainability of your Ionic applications. Or in case you don't have time for it, hire someone to do it for you. If you also want to write a better app next time directly, go check out the Ionic Academy, which has tons of courses and a community to support you on your journey to build Ionic applications. And this week, go out, improve the quality of your Ionic applications, and I will catch you next week like always. So happy coding, Simon.